Thank you for coming. Welcome. On behalf of Sunstone, I would like to just welcome everybody for coming for our Fireside tonight. My name is Lindsay Hansen-Park, and I am excited to be conducting this program. And Robin told me out of the two podiums, she told Kate and I that we should speak on this one because this is for the Melchizedek priesthood. So it's kind of cool. But we're going to go ahead and get started.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the opportunity we have to gather together today and to share fellowship and love and support, for the opportunity to feel thy Spirit and to learn and expand our understanding. Father, we invite thy Spirit to be here. We ask for a spirit of comfort and of understanding and of love. Please help us to find ways to best emulate our commitment and our devotion and our support in ways that allow us to live authentic spiritual lives. We offer this up to you, and we do this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say that we had this fireside planned before any of the discipline craziness started happening. So we had it planned for last weekend. We postponed. So I'm glad that so many people could make it. And under somewhat difficult circumstances. So welcome. Thank you for coming. Welcome to everyone who's feeling a little bit wounded and perhaps weary. Welcome to people who have walked this path for a long time, and some of you who are on this path just starting. My name is Kate, by the way, and I am the founder of a group called Ordain Women. You may have heard of it. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Ordain Women is, because I think as we reflect, it's only been a year. We launched the website on March 17th, 2013, which is the founding of the anniversary of the Relief Society. And it's only been just over a year since it's existed. It feels like the conversation is much longer than that, at least for me. And so I think it's important to look back on what we've accomplished so far and kind of talk about where we're going. So I was going to briefly give a brief presentation, but I did want to also have a conversation. So if anyone had any questions or specific things that you wanted me to talk about, I'm happy to take those. So keep those in mind. Ordain Women, like I said, we launched the website on March 17th. It was St. Patrick's Day and the founding of the Relief Society. We started the website with 20 profiles. And that was our goal. We had to get 20 because we wanted, like, the individuals who were willing to put their profiles up were very brave, but they didn't want to be the face of female ordination. They didn't want to be like one of five. And so we had to like beg, borrow, and steal those. We had to like call everyone we knew. We had to, both my parents and my sister and my husband. So I was really maximizing all of my familial contacts, as well as friends from college. And when I got the idea for Ordain Women in January of 2013, I started, old school. I just started calling people. I called Lori Winder. I called Chelsea Schildstrayer, who I knew from college. I just started calling people who I knew were brave, and I knew were talking about these issues. And so we got everyone we possibly could to commit, and we started the website with 20 profiles. At that time, I thought that might be it, ever. Like that might be it. We might just get 20 and it might just be a small, like mighty band of people. And I never anticipated the huge positive support that we would get. I never anticipated how many people would be behind this idea. The reason we started the website is because we are very committed to direct action. So I'm an attorney and an activist in other ways in my life, and I was very committed to bringing those skills to my work in Mormon feminism. So I was like, all right, how many Mormon activists are there? There's got to be a handful, right? So I tried to gather up as many as I could who were committed to the idea of direct action. And that's, over the process of time, is how we came up with the idea of trying to attend a priesthood session, which everyone was very scandalized by, but in my mind, I was like, come on! We're literally waiting in a line, and when they tell us to go away, we'll just leave. So I was like, this does not seem that revolutionary to me, given the other things I've done in my life. But I think the concept for Mormons is a very, very, very brand new concept, and now we have way more activists than we ever did before. So I think that's definitely an accomplishment. Ordain Women, since then, since those first 20 profiles, now has close to 400 profiles on the site. After the announcement of my excommunication, a very small handful, I think less than 5 people, took down their profiles, and those were mostly for emotional reasons, like they just couldn't handle the huge fallout. It's not that they had changed their mind about female ordination. So the site now has over 400 profiles of Mormon people, men and women, who support the idea of ordination. We've passed 2 million views on the website, 1 million of those in the last week and a half. Word's getting out. And our website has crashed several times because of the high traffic just in this past week. So the first in-person action we did was really a launch event. We launched an in-person launch event on April 6th during the priesthood session up at the University of Utah. How many people were at the launch event? Yeah, nice. Ordain Women pioneers. So we had a launch event, and really it was just kind of like a Quaker meeting. In some ways we had presentations, but then we also had a Quaker type meeting, sort of mix of testimony meeting, Quaker meeting, where people got up and spoke in favor of female ordination. And that was brave. There were cameras there. There was like more press than people. And so a lot of, even one of my friends who came to the meeting, his bishop saw him in the background of a picture in the back of a photo and called him in about it. Just being there was a risk. So I think we've incrementally really taken a lot of courageous risks over the last year. Another event that we did on August 26th, which is Equality Day, it's the day that women got the vote in the United States, we did an interfaith fast. So with Mormon, Catholic, Jewish, Buddhist, Evangelical, Lutheran women, we did a fast for gender equality in all of our faith traditions. We did an event here at Salt Lake in Washington, D.C., planned in conjunction with the Catholic Women's Ordination Conference. And they're, speaking of brave people, the Catholic Women's Ordination Conference is a very well-developed movement. They've been going for more than 30 years. And they recently, during the Papal Conclave, released pink smoke over the Vatican. And the papal smoke went up. So these are some very, very courageous ladies. Very, very, relatively speaking, we are very mild-mannered Mormon women. They're very inspired by the work we're doing, and the traction we're getting. And so we really have a lot of solidarity with those Catholic women. And they're teaching all of us a lot. Don't worry, we're not going to do any smoke, anything. But they are helping us be brave and giving us a lot of solidarity. The second action that we did, the first action that we did in person in Salt Lake was October 5th. We went to the priesthood session of conference. We had about 250 people, at that action, and we went one by one. You've probably seen the images of that action. We had one reporter who was from Al Jazeera covering it, and after we were done, he was like, "Wait, that was it." That's what everyone is freaking out. The internet is breaking over this. And that was it. We went one by one. We asked, we said, "I'm a faithful, active Mormon woman, and I think I should be able to attend one of the general sessions of General Conference." And each of us was turned away. I think that was a real turning point for me as far as my Mormon activism, because it really embodied the feelings that I have felt my entire life. Every week, every Sunday, I go to church and I feel excluded and marginalized, but it's very, it's very incognito. There's not a lot of discussion about it, and there's not a way for me to confront it. And so I felt like, and I've heard this from other women, that was a way for us to confront it. That was a way for us to say, we want in, in person. And just to warn you, I'm a real crier, so that's inevitable. I think the action that we did in October, I think there were several things that came out of that, but one of those is I really don't think the church knew how to respond to women who don't say, "Yes, we'll do whatever you say." So we walked onto Temple Square. Ruth Todd, who's the spokesperson for the church, intercepted us and told us that she was doing a press conference off-site and kind of insinuated that we should follow her. And I said, "Thanks for your kind words, we're going to the tabernacle." And I just walked right past her. And then everyone just followed me because they're like, "Okay, I guess we're doing this." And some people even, tagged my shirt and were like, "They said we should leave, we should leave." And I said, "No, we haven't had a chance to ask." And so that moment, I think, was a big moment for Mormon women. And for me personally, because we stood up for ourselves in a new way. And I think that was very brave and new. We had a bunch of different ideas. We decided to repeat the priesthood session action. And so we did the same thing in April. In April, we had 510 people attend in person and over 400 people submit proxy cards. So we permitted people who weren't able to make it in person to send in a card and a message, and we carried those with us, of the women who wanted to be there with us. And again, the church didn't quite know how to respond to women who, continue unabated. The church literally closed the temple gates on the entrance that we tried to go in. We had published in the Salt Lake Tribune the route we were going to take. I walked by that entrance on the way to the park, and when I walked back, the gate was closed. It wasn't closed previous to that. So, undeterred, a man walked out, just a random tourist passerby happened to walk out right when I walked up to the gate, so he pushed the gate open, looking very confused, like in the middle of a feminist parade or something. And he said, "I think this is supposed to be closed." And I grabbed the gate, and I said, "Nope." And so we walked in, and we did the same thing. We walked up, and we asked individually. The second time, the person who turned us away individually was a woman. So the optics were a little bit better from their perspective, but from my perspective, worse, because she also couldn't attend the meeting that we were trying to attend. So she was the firewall keeping us out of a meeting she herself could not attend. And I think that's very important to remember, that all of these women who are responding to us, all these women who are put in between us and the people who are keeping us out, are in a very, very bad position because they themselves are excluded. We also decided, which I thought was actually going to be a mild-mannered action, but turned out to be more controversial than it is. We started a series of 6 discussions. Those discussions are available on the website for download. They're PDFs where they have compiled materials. We did not write the discussions. We compiled materials and created discussion guides for people to go through. Unlike the missionary discussions, they are actually for people to discuss. At least from my experience in Spain, they were largely memorized. And so they're an opportunity for people to really dig in, because we felt like the conversation was happening in a lot of places, but we wanted people to have materials and have a forum to be able to go through the things that they were thinking, and not necessarily people who just agree, but people who want to think about the issues. So 5 of those discussions have been released. We're still working on the 6th discussion, so we're being judged even though all the content isn't even out there. But we're getting the 6th discussion out soon. And there's been a very positive reaction from the people who have actually participated and read them. They've been very well received, and I think it's helping a lot of people think about a lot of new things. One of the most controversial aspects, which again, maybe I should have anticipated, was the first discussion starts out with a game called Patriarchy Bingo. And it's really just a pedagogical tool to get women thinking about the ways in which patriarchy affects their lives. So we try to make them as interactive as possible. Turns out that was not as welcome as we thought it might be. Don't always get our humor. And we've continued on with the series of discussions. We've opened up a really wide web presence. We have all of the different social media, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. Mormon women are really into Pinterest. So we're starting to get more active on Pinterest boards. And we're just very, very, very beginning of this conversation. I think a lot of people are feeling very gloomy and very, just disheartened by what's occurred in the past week. But I think it's important to keep a wider perspective. Think of what we've accomplished in just over 1 year. A relatively very small group of men and women have started a worldwide conversation in our church. For the first time, every single person in every single ward is talking about this. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful accomplishment. We've gotten a statement from the first presidency of the church, which I also see as very positive. A lot of people often say that I'm too Pollyanna-ish, which might be true. But I see this as very positive. One of the things about the first presidency statement I see as positive is they state a fact, which is men are currently ordained to the offices of the priesthood, but they don't say anything about the future. And they don't say that women won't be ordained, and they don't say what women's role is in the priesthood. So that is wide open. We've heard from the first presidency, and they did not say that women will not be ordained. I think that's very, very positive. They also specifically said that it's okay to ask questions. I don't know what words you guys are going to, but that hasn't been the case for me in the past. And so I think that's a great precedent to set. It's okay to ask these questions in any ward, in any state, in the entire universe. The daily universe. I guess it's just the universe now, it's not daily. That is huge. I think that's something that people can point to and say, the church representative said that we can bring this up in Relief Society. Period. That is what was said. If you listen to the Radio West interview with Allyship, another woman who was put in a position of defending the patriarchy. I feel like another really big moment for me was after I was excommunicated, because I expected, and I don't think this is to my credit, I expected far more people to back down. I expected, 200 of the 400 profiles to remove their profiles out of fear. I feared that would happen, and that hasn't been the case. So I think Mormon women have changed. I think we have become more brave, and I think we're starting to stand up for ourselves in new ways, and that includes myself. I think we have demonstrated, both with our bodies and with our words and with our courage, that we will not be silenced. And that is huge. And I think what I've tried to demonstrate and emulate is that I will not be silenced. They can and have taken away my church membership, but they can't take away my voice. And what I had originally planned on talking about was what I learned in Young Women's. And I think what I'm doing now is living out the values that I learned as a young woman. Two of my favorite values were good works and integrity. And I think those are the suffrage colors. I'm usually so on point with my outfits, but I didn't wear yellow and purple today. I love the suffrage colors, and I love the values of good works and integrity. I think good works means faith combined with action. It's showing up. It's being, the brother of Jared asking the Lord for what you want and asking the Lord to light those stones. And it's being actively engaged. It's being Emma Smith, asking Joseph Smith, what is the deal with this tobacco? We've got to get a handle on this. And a revelation comes because a person asks a question. It's an active, when you think about the scripture in Matthew 7:7, it says, ask and you shall receive. It says, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Knocking is a very active, an active stance. And I think that's what we're doing. I think that's what's been missing, largely, in Mormon feminism thus far. And I think that's really what we have to contribute. Integrity is doing what's right and letting the consequences follow. And that's hard. Sorry, it's been a long week. It's hard to do what's right. It's hard to make difficult choices. It's hard to be seen as intransient when that's not what your heart feels. But again, I feel like that's something that I learned as a young woman in the church. I feel like I learned to stand up for myself in all kinds of situations, and I think that's what we learned from the pioneers. When you think about the pioneers, a lot of them had very comfortable situations, and they stepped away from those comfort zones intentionally. When I think about the pioneers, I think it's important to remember that they weren't already destitute living on the plains. Some of them had very nice lives in the East or in England or wherever they came from, and they gave that up. They stepped away from that comfort zone to do what's right. And that's what I learned in Young Women, so that a combination of good works and integrity is what is necessary to demonstrate your faith. And I think that's what we've demonstrated at Ordain Women. And I'm very, very proud of what we've accomplished. I think I've been thinking a lot about voice lately. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Helen Keller. Helen Keller was deaf and blind and learned how to communicate, and was a pioneer for all kinds of people, including people with disabilities. And she said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And that's what it is for me. Right now it's more on the daring adventure side. But I think life, in these times of trouble, in these times of pain and sorrow and heartache, it's important to remember that life is a beautiful adventure. It's full of magical moments. It's full of people who are inspiring. It's full of moments where you prove yourself to yourself who you are. And that's when it becomes a daring adventure. And for me, if it's not a daring adventure, it's nothing. And that's what point I kind of came to when I started Ordain Women. If I can't be my authentic self, if I can't tell the truth, if I can't go to church saying exactly what I think and feel, then it's nothing. And that's how I reinvested in the church. When Helen Keller learned how to speak, she learned how to sign different words, because she was blind and deaf. She learned how to make hand signs. And when she learned how to communicate, when she learned after months and months of frustrating work that her teacher, what the signs that her teacher was signing meant something, that it meant water or that it meant doll. She wearied her teacher, demanding to know the names of all the objects in her life. She just would not. She had insatiable appetite for speech and communication. And I think that's what I've developed, and we've developed over the past year, is we found our voice. And now that we've found our voice, we're not going to be silenced. Now that we've found our authentic selves, now that we've found out that after you take that step, nothing terrible is going to happen, and many good things will happen. Now that we've, and I've personally stepped into that void and faced a very, very high price. I won't say that it hasn't come at a great cost, but I feel fine. I mean, you're probably not believing me because I'm like bawling in front of a lot of people, but I'm feeling fine. This is how I probably was on April 6th when we started this whole adventure. And I feel like there's a lot of good to come in the future. I feel very positive. I feel very confident that women will be ordained. In fact, now I have no doubt that women will be ordained. And I look forward to that day because of the sacrifices that we made, because of the ways in which we have become what we want to be. And I see this entire process, whether or not women are ordained, as a transformative process. We have become brave, we have become speakers of the truth, and we have found our voices. Thank you very much. So, as an activist, I want people to, if they have questions, I want to answer a few questions before we end. But I do want to invite everyone to submit a profile. I wouldn't be a good activist if I didn't bring it up, or a good organizer. So if you haven't submitted a profile, or you think, oh, they already have 400, but they might not need more, we do. We do need your voices, we need each and every one. So please consider it. Out of 400 people, I'm the only person that's gotten excommunicated, so good odds, very good odds. You've got a fighting chance. So please do consider it if you're at all on the fence. Did anyone have any?
I'm not Mormon, but...
Me neither.
I went to Ordain Women and looked, and it really seems like you're really asking for profiles of Mormon women. The reason I'm here, one is for this, one, I have a daughter, and I feel like the culture that Mormonism, I'm going to use a word, I don't mean this way exactly, but imposes on non-Mormon people living here is everywhere. I've actually been at board meetings where I've been the person in charge of the meetings and walked into a room and the men there are talking about balls and balls and things as men can do. And I've had to say, could you speak, could you get some coffee? I love saying, oh, absolutely, getting a coffee, and then they call a meeting to order and introduce me. It's like, ah. But how can we be, as non-Mormon women, is there a place for us? Obviously, the ordained part is significant to me, but the empowerment of women and also to spread the word that inequality and discrimination against people based on any kind of difference is immoral. And what can we do to support you?
Well, thanks for coming. First of all, what were those guys doing drinking coffee? Just joking. I think it's very important. This is a very, very important point, particularly for non-Mormons, that inequality in a religious institution in a state that's so pervasive and so influences policy affects all people, not just Mormon women, not just Mormon men, but all people. Utah, my mom is a prosecutor, has been for 30 years in Utah is one of the highest in the top 10 routinely for sexual violence, sexual assault, domestic violence. Utah is one of the lowest states for women who graduate from university. Utah is in the top 5 income gaps between men and women. This is something that affects us all. And so I think it's very important to keep in mind, from my perspective, that women and men will not reach parity in society, and especially not in Utah, but in society at large, until change comes from within all major faith traditions. So not just Mormonism, but Judaism, Islam, Catholicism, all faith traditions need to change because they affect policy. They affect the way men and women interact with each other. They affect these so-called Mormon men who drink coffee, who are bossing you around. It is very, very pervasive and doesn't just affect Mormon people. So I think it's important for non-Mormons to support us. We do have a lot of profiles, not a lot, but we have several profiles from people who are not Mormons who talk about the reason, their daughters or their friends or the way it affects society at large. So we do definitely have profiles for non-Mormons. I think it's just important to remember that this is a community. If you're in any way invested in the Mormon community, or particularly the community in very Mormon-centric states, I think this affects us all. So, yeah.
Hi. I became known about you through Dylan. So he was a supporter of you, and that's how I found out about you. So I've been coming and learning about you because of Dylan. And most people that I've talked to, this is just like taken this whole issue, that was Dylan, and it turned to Kate Kelly. And so I didn't know anything about you. So all of this, people are just learning this week. Everyone's getting really obsessed with this. I was obsessed with this 2 weeks ago, and everyone was like, "Shut up!" And I finally shut up, and on Facebook, because I was like so drained. And now everyone's talking about it, and I shut up. I feel like I'm still learning about this, and I think a lot of us are. I think, like what you said, we just started. And what I find with people that are like this, about this is Kate Kelly has no tolerance. She's going to the First Presidency, and she's saying, we have to have priesthood, and that's it. And so, what is your response to that? I don't have anything to say when people say that. I say, well, I supported my friends when I went to the April, can we go to the priesthood? No, okay, bye. I was like, good, because I'm going to work. I was like, I hope they don't say yes, because I can't stay.
Actually, never mind.
I just been kind of supporting the supporters all along, just learning about you. But when people ask me, this is my question, she's got this no tolerance, and like Allie, I said, Allie, please set her tone. Honestly, what is your response to my mother that asks me this? Or
Yes.
That's
a big question. But I think, first of all, John Dylan is also being targeted for discipline for speaking out, and he's having a meeting with his stake president tonight, him and his wife, not a disciplinary council, but a meeting. So keep him in your prayers and in your thoughts tonight. And John, I would also mention, when I was calling everyone in January and saying, I'm thinking about doing a direct action about ordination in the Mormon Church. And everyone was like, what? John was one of the people who connected me with other people, was extremely helpful, was very supportive from day one of Ordain Women. So he was always in solidarity with what we're doing. And his profile on the site. I think one of the things two things. One is, Ordain Women is not Kate Kelly. Okay, stand up if you have a profile on the site. Yes, you guys are awesome. Or if you submitted one, we're still editing it because we got a long queue. So, Ordain Women is not Kate Kelly. Ordain Women is a group of hundreds of people who support the ordination of women, and it wouldn't be anything if it were just me. Like, nobody would be talking about this on Facebook if one person said, women should be ordained. The beauty of Ordain Women and the absolute achievement of Ordain Women is that we've cracked open a wider conversation. So it's not just me, thankfully, otherwise nothing would get done. I'm a very big ideas person. I'm like, this big idea, and then Chelsea's like, all right, what are we doing? We're meeting at this place. Okay, yeah, here's the reminder, here's the agenda for the call, so yeah, definitely would not be what it is without me, and without all of these people. I think the tone argument is particularly pernicious and terrible and happens not just in Mormon feminism, but everywhere. When's the last time you heard a man be called bossy? Ever in your life? That's a word in our culture that's reserved for women. Men who are assertive are called leaders. Women who are assertive are called bossy. So that tone argument is very, very, very problematic. And anyone lodging a tone argument needs to rethink everything in their life. They need to rethink their commitment to equality, they need to rethink feminism, they need to rethink some really basic things about the ways that men and women are treated. So I would start with the tone argument. Second, I would say there's nothing wrong with someone, in the scriptures we learn we have to weary the Lord with our petitions. That we have to ask and ask and ask, 70 times 7. And so I don't see anything wrong with women saying, this is what we want. This is what we want. And we're not going to burn down the chapel if we don't get it. We'll probably politely leave like we did before. But this is what we want, and we're going to state it unequivocally. There's nothing wrong with that. Secondly, the other thing that I usually say is, in the Bible, there's a story about 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They go into the fiery furnace with full and complete, total faith that what they want will happen. They want to be saved. And then they say, but if not, we will continue to serve the Lord. So me saying we want to be ordained, we think women should be ordained, is showing faith. It's an act of faith. This will happen. But if not, we're going to continue. And that is what I say. There's nothing wrong with women stating unequivocally their desires and the sincere desires of their heart. And if there is something wrong with that, then the person who's asking the question is the one with the problem. Anyone else?
I've got a lot of questions that kind of bounce in my head about all of this, and I'm sort of working through and thinking, right? But my question, I guess, is more on the personal side of what's going on with you, Sister Kelly. So you've gotten your vote from your disciplinary council, you've got the standard policy here before you could be rebaptized. What do you plan on doing between now and then? Are you planning on molding? Are you planning on talking with your newest bishoprics, where are you going? Or
Sister Kelly, that's my mom, she's here. I'm Kate. My plans, I think there's a lot to answer in that question. First of all, I'm going to appeal. So I have 30 days to appeal to my state president. My state president was my initial accuser and the one who instituted informal probation against me, so that appeal is unlikely to be successful. But I plan on appealing, and then once I appeal to him, then I can appeal to the first presidency of the church. So I plan on doing that. The statement that they made actually gives me hope, because I'm not guilty of either of the things they said, which is speaking ill of the Lord's anointed and preaching false doctrine. So I've never preached any doctrine other than false doctrine. I've just made a factual assertion, which is men and women are not equal in our church. That's true. That's just a fact. Anyone can see that who goes to a Mormon church on any Sunday anywhere in the world. So I've never taught any doctrine. So those two caveats give me hope for my appeal. I intend to appeal. If my appeal is not granted, I'm just going to soldier on. I'm moving to Kenya with my husband in a few weeks, and so we'll be in a totally new place where no one will recognize me. And I'll be in a really new position. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Honestly, this is a question that almost everyone has. And there's a lot of people who have been through this situation before. We've got the Margarets and the Levinas and people who have been through this purge before. And I'm not committing to being either a Margaret or a Levina at this point. I'm just committed to being me. And I don't know what that's going to bring. And I think it would be a little premature for me to say or commit, I'm going to go to church every day for the rest of my life and save my tithing in an account, even though they won't let me pay it. So in case someday I'm reinstated, I can give them all my money. That seems unlikely. But I do feel very, very called and committed to the community. So I'm definitely going to continue my work on the board of Ordain Women, which again is not just me. questions. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
So when women are ordained in the priesthood, what will ordained women do then?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I think, honestly, I'm totally delusional and everyone tells me this all the time. I'm like, we're like 7 years out maximum. I think it's very important. If you go on the homepage, ordainwomen.org, it says Ordain Women, Mormon women seeking equality and ordination to the priesthood. So even if Mormon women are ordained tomorrow, how many black members of the Quorum of the 12 or 70 are there? Two. So they were ordained in 1978, and we still don't have a wide, racial diversity in the leadership of the church. So there's still a long way to go. And even if women are ordained tomorrow, I don't anticipate that. I'm not that delusional. I think that there will be a long way to go for women to achieve equality in the church. And ordination is not a panacea. I just see it as the root, getting at the root of the problem. But there will be a lot of work to do, including all of the steps. If you look at All Are Like Unto God, on the website, there's a long list of ways in which women need to be integrated in the church. And I think all of those need to happen. So if women are ordained, we're going to continue to advocate for equality.
Given some of the lawsuits in the courts around marriage equality, do you think that this is reactionary and wanting to control areas within the denomination and theology based on some of those lawsuits?
I think this is about control of information in general. A lot of people ask me like, oh, it's such a deviation, the church was doing so well like during the Olympics and during the I'm a Mormon campaign, and they gained so much. Why are they taking a step back? But I actually don't see this as a step back. I see this as very consistent with the control of information. And so I think the church is really struggling because of the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is how all of us connected with each other, but it's also very difficult to strictly control information when anyone can, some people call it the Google apostasy. A lot of people are able to very quickly access information. And so I think this is, in some ways, the final, could be the final, the swan song of trying to control information and trying to control the message. So that's what I see it as, and I see it as very consistent with what they've done in the past.
So when you look at it, it's kind of like the printing press or the Gutenberg Bible was the Catholic Church.
In some ways, yeah. But I also think this is just like a whole new Mormon moment. They're just, before Ordain Women, I think we should really take credit for this. There weren't a ton of activists in the Mormon church, and I think we have hundreds now. And that's something that's really new. So, and the LGBTQIA movement of Mormons has made a lot of progress, more progress I think than women have in a lot of ways. And I can talk more about that, but I think Mormon activism is a brand new field, and I think we'll see a lot of fruit from it in the future.
Okay, I find it interesting that they say that you're accused of apostasy, and I read your brief, and you outline yourself, but I feel like the underlying thing is like, especially with this new PR statement, being like, you can ask questions, it's okay to ask questions, but the thing is, they want you to ask questions, so I feel like you were punished for asking a question that people agree with. And you can't control that, because basically they're upset that people are following you, but it's not like we're following you ex nihilo. It's like there was a need, and you were just the voice of that need. And so how do I'm just at the point where how do you struggle? Ask questions, but if you dare to have people agree with you, oh no.
Well, I think, again, I think this goes back to the control of information, because it's like, you had a question, but other people also have that question, how dare you? But I think, for example, my state president said that I am literally the only woman in the state with problems with gender inequality in the church. That's a state, not a word, let's keep in mind. So after what happened each made appointments with him to tell him she's not the only one. And being like, oh, it's not just her? You know, it's like whack-a-mole. They're just trying to, at this point, no, another one. And so, at this point, we just need to keep popping up, you know? And they'll find out how many people actually have these questions. They'll find out how many people actually have these concerns. And it's way, way, way more than they anticipated. And that control of information they're gonna have to shift to a different strategy entirely. Because it's not gonna be, they can't excommunicate hundreds and thousands of people. I mean, I guess ostensibly they could. But I'm certainly hoping that doesn't happen because it really sucks. But I think, you know, it's about speaking up. It's about making sure that it's known that this question is not a question that a small handful of people have.
This is more of a comment than a question, but I think also, not in addition to leaders speaking up, has also changed the minds of people around us. One of my husband's really good friends, who I've met like twice in my life, but we're Facebook friends, super traditional Mormon, and she messaged me after the walk in April when I went, and just said, like, I think that women will be eventually ordained. Like, I'm glad that you speak up, you changed my views on feminism, all these other things. And I think sometimes when we speak up, we kind of banish that crazy feminist in the closet idea.
And then that person says to her bishop, me too. Yeah, maybe 2 more questions.
Okay, I just want to say, so one of the things that's been so frustrating to me about this whole thing, I love that Ordain Women has started this discussion, but one of the most frustrating things I have seen is when I have these kind of conversations with men, Mormon men, they're like, oh, that'd be great, like, yeah, I'm all on board, it's a great idea, let's get this thing going. And then when I talk to like really true believing Mormon women, I don't feel one bit less than. I've never felt any inequality. And I'm like, you know, even on Sunday, like you can see it, you know what I mean? And, like I felt the first time I really felt it was when I went to the temple. And since, you know, recently I've had to kind of take a step back, just to my face, I've gotten in trouble for things that I've said and stuff, but like so what do you say to those women who are like, I've never once felt less than, I don't know why you ladies are asking, because I can't, like, if I were to tell them, it would just be like, but, you know, it's too much, I feel like I need to,
Concise.
super hot, like,
Well, 2 things. One is, I wanted to say that we also have a male allies committee, and so all the men in the room, it's very important that you're here. Mark, can you stand up? Mark is the committee head of the Male Allies Committee of Ordained Women. So if you're interested and you're a man, you should go talk to Mark because we need help on the Male Allies Committee. And they're running a discussion about how to be a good male ally. So I think that's something that Mormon men really, 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 really need. And because a lot of Mormon men support us, but they don't really know how to be a good ally. And it's very hard because coming from a position of privilege where you have the priesthood and you've always been the protagonist of every story that you've ever heard, it's hard to know how to help. So that's one thing. Secondly, I would say, when I've said before, equality is not a feeling. You can feel supported, you can feel loved, you can have an opinion that you don't care that men and women are unequal, but equality is not a feeling. And men and women are not equal in our church, period. But at the same time, I would approach them with love by saying, I was there. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very, very difficult to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm 33 years old and I've been actively participating in and contributing to an institution that values me as less. That's a hard, hard place to get to. And it was for me. Very hard. So I think we need to have compassion for people who feel, maybe there are some people who just don't care. They're like, I don't care if I'm less than you, or, you know, there are people like that. But there are also people who are facing that mirror for the first time, and it's very, very difficult. And so I think we need to have compassion. Not every person is going to agree that women should be ordained, but some will. If if we have patience, and if we remember where we were, you know, when we discovered, oh my gosh, like this is bad. You know, so I would say both things. I would say very clearly that women are not equal in the church, but also say like, was my experience when I faced that.
Discussion number 1.
Also read discussion number 1. Discussion number 1 is very, very good for people who have never thought about patriarchy as a concept, other than like it exists. So have them just read discussion number 1, even if they won't come to a group, because it's genius. I didn't write it, so I can say that. It's a genius tool to really help people think about the ways in which it affects them. Yeah, Holly?
You talked about ordained women as a new kind of Mormon feminist activism, but of course before ordained women there was Mormon feminist activism. There was Wear Pants to Church Day, and Stephanie Morrison did not get excommunicated. Instead, she was just threatened with her death.
Right. Not a spiritual death.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of Mormon women asking and of them wearing pants.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about why you think this is so fundamentally scary to the Mormon community?
So there was Wear Pants to Church Day, and there was also a campaign for Let Women Pray, which was not planned by Ordained Women. I mean, there was a lot of crossover, because there's a lot of crossover in the Mormon feminist community. In general, we're still drawing from a small pool. But those 2 actions were really, really fantastic and very inspiring. I think part of it is Mormon women and people in general are very centrally focused on the concept of obedience. I mean, that didn't come out of nowhere. There's lessons about it like every month. It's a very, very strictly enforced. And as my dad said, there's a difference between obedience and subservience. And I think it's very hard to separate those out. So just because you're an obedient person doesn't mean you have to say, yes, sir, every time. But that's very hard for, especially Mormon women. Like, I'm not just some like wild, crazy lady. When I was participating in October 5th, I was scared. I'm like, and I got all these people behind me. So I think it's very difficult to confront that. And I think there's a cultural passive aggression, and being assertive is really runs in the head of being, passively aggressive. It's hard for us to be assertive. It's hard for me to be assertive. I know you're finding that hard to believe, but it's hard for me to be assertive in the ways that I am being. And so I think that's just really culturally ingrained.
I don't think a lot of people have been really obviously hurt by you being excommunicated, and a lot of people who are wanting to leave. What would you say to these people?
Well, that's a hard one. I've been trying to be very honest about that. I guess honesty is my thing, right? That's what got me in trouble. But I think, from my honest opinion, if you can stay, you should stay. Not everyone can stay. You have to evaluate your own emotional well-being and whether or not it's a healthy, safe place for you to be. And I can't tell you whether or not that's true for you. For a lot of Mormon feminists, it's not. For a lot of LGBTIA people, it's not. It's harmful. And so if it's harmful for you, you should find a safe place. But if you can't stay, I think you should stay. But people of conscience can't stay and say nothing. That's my position, point blank. You can't stay and say nothing. If you know that this is a problem, if you've looked in the mirror and said, oh, this is really bad, you can't stay and say nothing. So if you stay, and I would encourage you to stay, you have to speak up. It's hard, and that may make it less of a safe place. So you may need to take breaks, you may need to, find allies within your congregation. Whatever you need to do to stay if you can. And if you can't, I understand. Yeah, one last question.
So it seems to me that we've entered a new phase of priesthood apologetics because
Yeah, I think the change in rhetoric is very swift change. Like, how many conference talks about women in the priesthood did we have before 2013? 0. And so every conference they're talking about it, they're digging into the rhetoric. I feel like there's not a total accord as to what exactly it is or means, and it's because they've never been asked this question before. Gordon B. Hinckley said there is no agitation on that our women are happy. They know that's not true anymore, you know? And so if nothing else, we've communicated there are some Mormon women who disagree with that statement. And so they are also having to grapple with this for the first time. So I see those steps as great steps forward. Again, when I see the 7-year timeline, I'm like, okay, well, in 1967, an Eldon Towner said that the Negro would never get the priesthood, she used quotation marks, and in 1978 it happened. So we're already at the I don't know why stage, as far as women getting the priesthood. And Elder Anderson said in conference, we don't know why. And in this most recent statement from the First Presidency, there's nothing about why women don't have the priesthood, and there's nothing to say they won't in the future. So I see a lot of really, really positive, it's not where we want to be eventually, but I see that move as really, really positive. Yeah, Edward. Well, another good male ally.
It has to be, of course, the Mormon world has been curiously trying to figure out what their excommunication means. And then eventually, your place in the history of the Mormon Church will figure out what it means. But in terms of what it means to you, so far you've told us that this is the result of your good works and integrity, the thing that's happened to you. Do you see yourself as having sacrificed something or as having purchased something with your excommunication?
Let's keep in mind it's only been a week. I think it's a huge sacrifice for me personally in my everyday life. It's very, very painful. It's very, very, when we went to in April, the church rhetoric got a lot more aggressive. The second time we went, they tried to close the gates. When I went up to the front of the line, the man at the front of the line took the red barrier tape and physically put it around me and flossed it so I was on the outside of the line. And I think and he was very, very aggressive. And I think that's a metaphor for what's happening to me now. And it hurts bad. But I think in the end, of everything, I feel like what I did was speak with integrity. And so it's worth it. It really, 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 really stinks. But I think it's worth it. What it means in the future, I don't know. I think from what I've seen on Facebook, if you disagreed before I got excommunicated, you really disagree now. And if you agreed before I got excommunicated, you really agree now. But I hope it brings the conversation a little bit farther. I hope people see, even if I don't agree, there were 1,000, this is the last thing I'm going to say, because I know it's very hot. There were over 1,000 letters submitted on my behalf for my excommunication hearing. And half of those letters were I don't agree. I'm not part of Ordained Women. But what you're doing is wrong. And we should be allowed to ask questions. And this person doesn't deserve what you're doing. So I think the conversation has opened up to a brand new group of people who may or may not agree with Ordained Women, but know what happened to me was wrong.
Thanks again for coming. I just wanted to say thanks. This is Robin Linkart from the Community of Christ. For those who don't know, that's the former RLDS church. So this building has specific significance to many of us LDS people. And since they don't ever proselytize because they are so far opposite of pushy, I just wanted to say that they do have a meeting called LDS Seekers for people who are struggling and want something to transition for. So you can talk to Robin if you're interested in that. And I also want to thank Katrina Anderson and Michael Ferguson resources for our symposium coming up. It's our big, it's kind of like a big party. It's like this, but on speed. It's awesome. There's no speed, but there is Diet Coke, and it's really fun, and there's going to be a lot of the Ordained Women leaders speaking. There's going to be panels on that, talking about that. There's going to be lots of panels on excommunication. You can kind of get an idea of what's in the program there. And I would just encourage everyone to come. It's an awesome time, and you don't need to be scared. It's great. So go ahead and get one of those, and if you're interested in subscribing to our magazine, I think we have magazines. We have magazines outside, so you can take a free copy with you and consider subscribing and staying on top of all this cool Mormon stuff that